If for any reason you are not, please note that in the chat box. Okay, there's no comments in the chat box, so I'm assuming everybody is seeing the same screen. Well, why don't we get started? Welcome, everybody. We're delighted that you can join us for today's Margin and Mission Ignition webinar, number 1. It's a delight to have you all here with us. We've got a nice-sized group joining us for today's session. We recognize names for many of you who may have joined us for previous Margin and Mission Ignition webinars or labs, but we also see a number of new folks who are joining us as well. So welcome to the newbies and welcome to those who have come back again and are familiar with us. If I could just call your attention to this first slide, the Did You Know slide. It's for us just a real pleasure to share with you that we have worked with almost 20 nonprofit organizations in the 4-county region surrounding Sarasota. So it's Sarasota County, Manatee County, DeSoto, and Charlotte. And collectively, since we started working with those organizations since 2015, they've generated $6 million in revenue from their earned income ventures, which in and of itself is a significant accomplishment and one that we believe is important to share with all of you because today's webinar is really all about earned income and what you should know about Margin and Mission Ignition. So with that, I'd like to move into the content for the session. Before we get started, we do love when organizations get connected and share on social media. So please feel free during today's webinar, if you're so inclined, to share any tidbits of information that you find particularly relevant or interesting with others. So our handles on Twitter are at the Patterson FD at margin_mission, and we use 2 hashtags, TPF Margin Mission and hashtag earned income. And of course, if anyone would like to go onto Facebook and like our respective Facebook pages, feel free to look up the Patterson Foundation and No Margin, No Mission. We're delighted that you're all here today. Thank you for joining us. This is the first webinar of 2 in our series for Margin and Mission Ignition, and it's titled Margin and Mission Ignition, What is it and why should nonprofits participate? We have a few goals for our webinar today. The first of which is we would like all of you to learn a little bit about Margin and Mission Ignition. What is it? Why is it valuable for nonprofit organizations? And for those of you who are not familiar with Margin and Mission Ignition, how you can participate in our 2019 initiative. Just a brief word about myself. My name is Michael Ackerman. I am one of the managing partners and principals in a firm called No Margin, No Mission. And we work very closely with the Patterson Foundation to help nonprofits look at ways to develop earned income ventures and bring them to life. Also on the line with me is my colleague and partner in crime, and I will let him say a brief hello.
Hi, my name is Larry Clark. I'm the other managing partner at No Margin, No Mission, and I'll come back later in the session and answer some questions folks might have.
And just a word about No Margin, No Mission. For those of you who don't know who we are or what we do, we're a national consulting practice. As I mentioned a moment ago, we work in partnership with the Patterson Foundation, and our focus is on helping nonprofits think in ways that are entrepreneurial and apply business strategies so that they can accomplish greater mission impact and build their revenue through earned income and social enterprise. We're uniquely focused on that as our niche, and that is what we do 100%. Also joining us on today's webinar are Michael Corley. He's a senior consultant for administration at the Patterson Foundation, and Josephine Eisenberg. She is in initiative support for the Patterson Foundation. And we would like to just say thank you to both Michael and Josephine for joining us, for supporting this initiative, and also to Josephine for organizing this webinar and the next one on February 19th. I think they have said a hello, or at least Josephine has said a hello into the chat box. If you don't know who the Patterson Foundation is, just a brief word about them. They are a foundation based in Sarasota, working regionally to help strengthen people, organizations, and communities that are focusing on a few issues. One, to address common aspirations. Two, to foster widespread participation across each of those groups. And then thirdly, to ensure that organizations are learning and sharing as they evolve. So this initiative is generously supported by the Patterson Foundation, and we just can't say enough good words and thanks to them for all they do in this community. Just a brief note before we get started that as we're sharing about earned income today, the line is muted. So that if you do have questions, if you do have any comments, please note them in the chat box. We will be monitoring them, and when we get to the Q&A portion of today's webinar, we're going to answer as many questions and address as many comments as time allows. We are scheduled to wrap today at 2 o'clock. If we're done early, that's great, but if depending on how many questions and comments you have, we may use up the full time. So with that, let's get into the session. And we'd like to start by grounding everybody in what you all know and understand as a reality for nonprofit organizations. So we typically like to ask nonprofit leaders, board members, and staffers what keeps them up at night or what their biggest concern is on an ongoing basis. And almost always, their response to us is fundraising. How do we raise enough funds to do the good work that we do, to keep our doors open, and to ultimately sustain ourselves as a nonprofit so we can do the mission-focused work that we do? So our response to that is, not surprisingly, that in today's nonprofit environment, nonprofits really do need diverse revenue streams so that they can be stronger and more thrivable. Much like the way we approach our own financial portfolios, it's important to keep diverse streams of revenue in those portfolios, and the same goes for any nonprofit organization. And again, not surprisingly, considering that we as an organization believe in earned income, we say one of the ways to have a diverse revenue pie is to sell goods and services. So by selling products or services, it's a way to generate revenue and ultimately, assuming it's aligned with your mission, to help you increase the impact, the mission impact of your nonprofit organization. And we're often asked, well, what can we sell? What kinds of goods and services, do we as a nonprofit, or could we as a nonprofit actually sell to customers and consumers? And our response to that is there are numerous possibilities. In fact, we've worked with upwards of 200 organizations, and a good percentage of those organizations have different earned income ventures or social enterprises that can take many different forms. So just to share with you all what some of those possibilities are, they can range from adult daycare services to animal behavior classes, brick and mortar retail stores or an online store, English language tutoring, folk school classes, home cleanout services, horseback riding, instruction, legal services, physical therapy services, theater performances, venue and site rentals, veterinary services, and the list goes on and on. So if you as an organization haven't thought about what those possibilities are for your own nonprofit, a good starting point is to look inside and say, well, what do we have? What have we created that perhaps we're giving away for free or selling at a low cost that we could turn into a viable earned income venture? So with that, I'd like to just introduce our Margin and Mission Ignition initiative for 2019. Today is the official kickoff with this first webinar, What is Margin and Mission Ignition and Why Should Nonprofits Participate?, which will then lead into webinar number 2 in a couple of weeks on February 19th. And we'll continue this conversation with all of you to talk about how Margin and Mission Ignition helps nonprofits boost their entrepreneurial capacity, revenue, and mission impact. And I just want to note that for those of you who are on today's webinar, we're delighted that you're here, and you can certainly feel free to invite others from your organization to join us for webinar number 2. As you know, this is being offered free, and it's generously being supported by the Patterson Foundation. So if you're so inclined to invite others to webinar number 2, please feel free to do so. The second part of Margin and Mission Ignition, which I'm just going to comment on now and we'll talk about more in a few minutes, are the learning labs. And again, for those of you who have participated in some of our learning labs in the past, you're familiar with these. If you're not, let me just comment on these. So what will happen is after webinar number 2, we will invite all of you, and again, absolutely free of charge, the learning labs are going to be supported by the Patterson Foundation, to join us for a series of 4 sessions. The dates are referenced on this slide, the first one on March 12th, the second one on April 9th, the third one on May 9th, and the fourth one on June 13th. And each lab dives into a topic related to earned income and social enterprise that offers both insight, learning, and understanding on that particular topic, and also lets your organization and your group collaborate, spend time together, working as a team to dive into these various topics. So again, for those organizations that really are interested in learning and gaining some understanding about earned income, this is a wonderful opportunity. So making sure that each of you know that you're going to be welcome to come and invited to attend these learning labs. We'll share more about these in a few minutes. So what is Margin and Mission Ignition? Again, for those of you who are not familiar with the initiative, it is an initiative of the Patterson Foundation, and it was created specifically to help nonprofits locally. So again, in the 4-county region, Sarasota, Manatee, Charlotte, and DeSoto counties, to help local nonprofits increase their thrivability. And to do that in 3 ways. Through this initiative, we help you grow your entrepreneurial capacity. So looking at ways to think, act, and do like entrepreneurs do. And then in turn, to help you either launch or grow an earned income venture or a social enterprise that will boost your revenue as a nonprofit. And then thirdly, obviously, and very importantly, is by so doing, having the opportunity to heighten your mission impact, which is ultimately what it's all about. But again, recalling where we started a few minutes ago, this idea of being able to diversify your income or diversify your revenue pie is absolutely important. So having a stream of revenue through earned income can be very beneficial. Margin and Mission Ignition really offers a few unique things that we love to talk about. First, and I will say that as an initiative, as an earned income initiative, it's very unique in the country. There are not very many places where you can go to participate in an initiative like this that is as deep and involved as this one is, that is supported by a philanthropic organization, a foundation like the Patterson Foundation. So again, just to underscore, this is being offered completely free to nonprofits in the region. So what this initiative offers is earned income education and training. And I want to underscore the fact that we are now going into our 5th year of running this initiative with the Patterson Foundation. So since 2015, literally hundreds of nonprofits have engaged in and gone through a series of earned income learning labs. Again, we open this up to every organization that has a current profile in the giving partner. So if your organization has a profile in the giving partner, you are welcome to join us for these learning labs. It is also an opportunity for nonprofits to get very intensive one-to-one consultation and technical assistance to develop and implement a business plan for an earned income venture. Now, I'll talk more about that in a few minutes, but the Learning Lab series that I referenced a moment ago is open to every organization that has a profile in the giving partner. And then for those organizations that go through those learning labs, there will be an opportunity to apply for some intensive one-to-one consultation and technical assistance to develop and implement a business plan. I'll talk more about that in a moment. So who are the organizations in the 4-county region that have been through the intensive one-to-one consulting and technical assistance phase of this initiative? You likely will recognize some or many of these organizations, but as I said earlier, there are now 19 organizations that have gone through the full initiative, which we'll talk more about in just a few minutes. We'd like to just reference the fact that the organizations that participate in Margin and Mission Ignition are diverse. They're diverse in terms of their size. So operating budgets can range anywhere from $5 million plus, or be in that $1 to $5 million range, or we've had many organizations participate that have operating budgets of less than $1 million. So we certainly don't discriminate based on size of operating budget. The organizations are geographically dispersed in terms of the counties. And if you look at the sectors that they represent, they cover everything from aging and animals to arts and autism, housing and Latino education, legal services, literacy, museum, and a vision organization. So again, quite diverse. Now let me dive in a little bit and share with you an overview of what the various components of the initiative are. The objectives for Margin and Mission Ignition are to ignite your interest in earned income, to help you explore possibilities to diversify your revenue, by providing some time and space and expertise to develop and implement business plans, to expand your fundraising capacity, to embed entrepreneurial practices, and then ultimately to sustain and extend your capacity to do good as an organization. So we have what we call a journey, and the journey is, it ultimately consists of a number of phases of both work and of activities that take place over an extended period of time. But the journey itself starts with the 2 free webinars, the first of which is today, and then ultimately leads up to the centerpiece for this initiative, which is that lab series that I spent a few minutes talking about earlier. So once these webinars are complete in February, we will kick off the Learning Lab series, one each month for 4 months. So March, April, May, and June. And every nonprofit with a profile in the giving partner is invited to participate. What happens then after the lab series is that we start to get a little bit more selective, and we ask the organizations that participate in the lab series to really meet some participation criteria. And ultimately what we do is we set up an application process that takes place after Lab 4. A group of organizations are selected to become part of a cohort. And those organizations would then go through some intensive one-on-one consulting and technical assistance to develop and implement a business plan. So you can see as this journey continues, there are a number of components that are a part of that business planning phase of work. Again, a select number of organizations who are really qualified to participate. That then leads to the next phase of our journey, which is all about implementing the business plan and bringing it to life, and then ultimately moving into a final phase of the initiative, which is to help track and monitor progress over time. So I've moved through this quickly, but now I'd like to just spend a few minutes getting a little bit more specific about these core elements of that journey and what they look like. So as I mentioned before, once these webinars are complete, the labs. 4 labs, dates are referenced, topics are referenced. Each lab is interactive, highly engaging, and provide a wonderful opportunity for you and your teams to come together and really dive deep into earned income and social enterprise and apply learning and education specifically to your organization. The first 3 labs are each a half day, and the 4th lab, which is the culmination of the lab series, is a full day. So how do they work? As I said earlier, it's open to nonprofits in the region as long as you have a current profile in the giving partner. We do ask for an important reason that the leader, executive director, CEO of your organization, a board member, and a staff member attend each of the 3 labs. We believe that's important for buy-in, we believe that's important for collaboration, and we believe it's important to have a team in place that really takes ownership and accountability to move this earned income thinking along. We do have some phone coaching calls and some homework between each of the labs that we ask each organization to make sure they do and meet as part of the participation criteria. That then leads us to the second phase. So after Lab 4, we have a written application for those organizations that believe they are ultimately ready to take on an intensive business planning and implementation process. So if you meet those participation criteria, like attending the labs, completing the homework, participating in our coaching calls, very importantly, making sure that you have a strong and viable earned income possibility or opportunity. And we ask that, the organizations that advance demonstrate a real preparedness for earned income. So assuming that you meet all those criteria, we are going to choose a small number of organizations. So in the past, we've selected anywhere between 4 and 6 organizations that advance to participate in an intensive one-to-one consulting phase of this initiative. So the first phase of the initiative then is the development of the business plan. It lasts about 14 weeks. We provide support in terms of consulting and technical assistance from No Margin, No Mission, so meaning Larry Clark and myself work with you one-on-one. And the end result is a really detailed, comprehensive business plan for your earned income venture, and one that has many uses for your organization. not the least of which is having that business plan so that you can share it with investors and donors to raise some startup or growth capital, and then ultimately being able to implement and bring that business plan to life. As I mentioned a moment ago, raising business plan and startup or growth capital is absolutely critical to getting a business, whether it's a new business off the ground or taking an existing business to the next level. So we believe it's never too early to start raising that startup or growth capital, which is why we provide, as part of this initiative, support to do that. So simultaneous to business planning, you'll work with an expert in fundraising to really help you plan for and raise that startup or growth capital for your earned income venture. Very important. We also have a wonderful event that happens after that fast pitch that happens after the business plan development, called the fast pitch. And the fast pitch is our own friendlier version of Shark Tank. And each nonprofit, once they've developed their business plan, invites a group of what we call mission impact investors into a session to share their business plan highlights and to make a financial ask toward supporting their startup or growth capital goal. They have 10 minutes to do that, and ultimately a certain amount of time, roughly within 3 months, to raise their needed startup capital to get their business plan off the ground. That then leads into the next phase of the initiative, which is implementing the business plan and bringing it to life. And that is another 14-week phase of work, working one-on-one to really build the business itself based on the components that were identified in your business plan, and continuing to work one-on-one with No Margin, No Mission, and with the fundraising expert that is assigned to work with your organization as part of this initiative. And then ultimately, we would move into the final phase of the initiative. So after the plan has been developed and implemented, there's what we call a post-business plan implementation phase to monitor and track progress. So we, as part of this initiative, the Patterson Foundation, as part of this initiative, want every nonprofit to succeed that's gone through this process. So we stay with them, and we stay with them for a period of 2 years, albeit we cut back pretty substantially on the level of support that we provide. But again, there's a certain level of one-on-one consultation and technical assistance that's provided for this phase of work. And there's some accountability measures that get put in place to make sure that your business venture is moving along in the right direction. So with that, if we can come back to where we started at the beginning of this webinar, what this is really all about, and as I said earlier, really the core and centerpiece of this initiative starts with the learning labs. And we want to just make sure that you save these dates. I will note that I believe you all received a save the date email probably 3 or 4 weeks ago that just flagged these dates. But if you haven't done so, we would urge you to get them on your calendar, and we invite all of you to participate in the learning labs. So the first one is a little bit more than a month away, so you do have time to get it on your calendar and plan for it along with the others. I've done a lot of talking, and at this point, what I'd like to do is to take some time to answer any questions that you have or to address any comments that you have related to anything that I've shared with you today, or anything else that you may be interested in or curious about. So I think at this point, what I'd like to do is, Larry, I'm going to open it up to you and see if there's any questions that we can answer that were either in the chat box or that have come up separately.
Thanks, Mike. There was one question that came up so far from Michael Chapman, and it's regarding a community foundation. So the question is, what are some highly effective earned income possibilities for community foundations? And I guess, Michael, there's two ways to think about that. One is, what can you do for your grantees? And if you're already doing education and training for your grantees, if you have initiatives for your grantees, this is one way that you could roll out earned income to them by doing some type of a lab series similar to ours, and by providing some resources for them on the ground to make sure that they can develop an earned income strategy and get business planning off the ground. The Patterson Foundation is really instrumental in fine-tuning this model. It's been replicated to a community foundation in the Northeast, which we've just wrapped up our 4 learning labs there. So there is a community foundation already in place that has seized the opportunity and are moving forward. I guess on the flip side, and I'm not exactly sure about the question, but sometimes community foundations generate earned income by having donors provide funds to them, and then them hosting the donor foundation or a secured fund within the foundation, and has an overhead that they take out of that, and maybe even there's a profit margin for the community foundation. So if you're looking specifically at what can a community foundation do in earned income, that's one way to do it, which you're probably already doing. So hopefully I answered your question. Linda asked a question, can you give some examples of types of technical support you referenced? There's 2 types of technical support, actually 3 types. The first is business planning. So during that business planning phase of work, we work with you very closely in writing all the sections of the business plan. So we provide examples to you, we coach you, we mentor you throughout that, we review your work every week. We have a weekly phone call and provide that technical assistance to you. During the implementation phase of work, it's really kind of on the ground then, and technical assistance about making sure your website gets revised or your staffing gets hired that you might need to pull it off. So the technical assistance shifts from developing the business plan to actually operationally, how do we get it off the ground? And then in the tracking and monitoring phase, it's more about on a monthly basis, we provide technical assistance. You might be having some great successes that we can celebrate with you, or it might be that there's a problem or a concern or a shift in your market that we need to address on that monthly call. So in each phase of work, there's a little different way that we provide technical assistance. Brooke asked, do you assist with business plans for new products and services that a 501c3 is venturing into? Yes, that's really what this is all about, is 501c3s launching business plans and nonprofit launching business plans. And again, you need to be a part of the giving partner here in Sarasota to participate with us. What do you mean by nonprofit profile, and how to get a giving partner, and what's the giving partner do? So the giving partner is a database that's held at the Community Foundation here in Sarasota. And so you can go to their website, you can take a look at what that Community Foundation provides in there. They host it for a number of different reasons. Probably the primary reason is to provide information that you can share with the community. And if there's a donor or investor out there that is looking to provide some resources, it's a great place that they can go and learn more about your organization. I live in Lee County, Florida, still Southwest Florida. Can I participate in the labs? I found out about this initiative from the Patterson Foundation staff, person to attend. At this point, the labs are open to the 4 counties that Mike mentioned, but why don't you send us an email separately and we can have a conversation about that. Larry Patton asked, is this appropriate for performing arts organizations? We have no products except our performances. Yes, definitely it's open to performing arts organizations. If you take a look at a couple of the organizations that Mike highlighted in the lab, out of the 19, a couple of them are performing arts organizations. One is in Charlotte County and one is in Manatee. So definitely performing arts organizations, and you'd be surprised at the kinds of earned income strategies that you can come up with. Brooke says, do you have to win? Not quite sure what that means. I think, I'm not quite sure what that means, Brooke. Do you have to win? Is it a competition? As Mike said, if you're talking about the application phase of work, we look at leadership, willingness, readiness, capacity, and culture. We look at a number of different factors to make sure that you're ready to move into business planning. So if you meet those factors that we have in place, then you would have a possibility of moving in. Jennifer asked, is it possible to qualify to fully participate in this just the executive director and a board member who participates when you do not have a staff person who can be a part of the team? If you don't have a staff person, then you can bring another board member, you can bring a strong volunteer, but you have to have 3 people attend. If you do have staff, it's really important that you bring that second staff person other than the executive director. But 3 people is mandatory, with the executive director and a board member being 2 of the 3. Brooke said, the reason I asked for the last labs, there was a winner, so I didn't think there was more support after that. The reason I ask, I'm not sure what you mean, Brooke, about a winner. The reason I ask is in our last labs, there was a winner, so I don't think there was more support after that. After the 4th lab, as Mike mentioned, there's an advancement process or an application process. And if you want to move forward with us, then you fill out that, send it in by the timeline, we review it and turn it around very quickly and really start business planning very quickly after that 4th lab. Tina asked, our MPO already has an earned income business. Will the labs help us improve the earned income business and take it to the next level? Definitely. They definitely will, because I think you'll be pushed to think outside the box. You'll think about earned income maybe a bit differently. And if you choose to move forward with us, Tina, in some cases, you already have that earned income, you're already doing it, and you can apply for us to help you take it to a whole different level. Charlotte County, there's a couple of projects we've done down there, here in Sarasota, and also in Manatee that we've done that. Barbara asked, I think she means there was a winner in the Shark Tank kind of competition. No, as Mike mentioned, the Shark Tanks, each group has, after they do their business plan, they do a separate fast pitch, which is like a Shark Tank. There's no winners in that. You do it independently. And the donors and the funders show up, and hopefully you raise a good portion of your startup capital that day. But the only winner is you as the organization, hopefully getting some startup capital that day. Brooke said in the last labs, there was one agency chosen. Not the case. There was a number of agencies that were chosen to move forward. Barbara said, just to clarify, the Sarasota Community Foundation would assist me in setting up a profile and getting a giving partner if one is available. Barbara, I'm not sure where you're at, but go ahead and go to the Sarasota Community Foundation website, take a look at the giving partner, and it will provide clarity to you whether you can be a part of that or not. How much do we charge? Anita asked that. To move forward, to go to the Learning Labs, there's no fee. If you're chosen for yourself, if you're chosen to move forward with business planning, there's no fee. The only fee to the organization, if you're chosen to move forward with the whole initiative, or even just to go to the Learning Lab, is your time, which is very valuable. And there's just a small amount of fee later in the process to get Live Plan, which is a business planning software. Very cheap, it's like $100 a year. So thanks to the Patterson Foundation, all the consulting fees from the business planning consulting to the fundraiser that's brought in is all being covered by the Patterson Foundation. Can we get a copy of your PowerPoint after the program? Barbara, the PowerPoint will be up on the Patterson Foundation website along with the whole lab, since Mike recorded it along the way. So you can draw on it there. Any other questions?
Larry, I'm just going to interject for one moment.
Sure.
I know that to come back to Brooke's questions about the winner, Brooke, I just want to make sure that you're not confusing this initiative with a competition that took place in Tampa through Social Venture Partners. So what happened in that particular business planning competition was that a number of nonprofits came together over the course of a full day, presented their business plans to a whole group of social venture partners and others in the community. It was a very large event, and they did pick a winner or a very small number of winners and awarded a cash prize to those organizations. So again, I know, Brooke, that you and your organization have participated in our learning labs, but I just want to make sure that there's no confusion there.
Mike, there was another question from Michael Chapman, which you might take. How will the second webinar be different from this one?
So the second webinar, Michael, this is really a bit more about the nuts and bolts of margin and mission ignition. What is it? What are the various components of it? And why is it important? The next webinar is really going to share some of the value of it. So for those organizations that have participated in the learning labs, for those organizations that have gone through the more intensive part of the consulting and technical assistance phase of the initiative, what was the value? What did they get from it? So you'll see a lot and hear a lot about how organizations have benefited. So hopefully that answers your question.
And that was our last question.
I think Michael Corley has a question. So let me just see. I may try to open the, see if I can open the mic. Michael, can you hear me? And if so, can you see if the rest of the group can hear you?
You're referring to Michael Chapman or Michael Corley?
Oh, maybe it was Michael Chapman. So
okay, yes, I'm Michael Chapman. Yes,
Okay, forgive me then. All right. Well, then, if we can, why don't we bring webinar to a close? Just a few slides to share with you as we wrap. So again, for those of you who are here with us, we invite you to join us for webinar number 2. It is on the 19th, and as I mentioned, we're going to take a look at, sort of the value and benefit that organizations who have been through the learning labs and the consulting and technical assistance portion of the initiative have had as a result of it. Today's webinar has been recorded, as Larry mentioned earlier. There will be a link made available for any or all of you to view on the Patterson Foundation website. It should be up by tomorrow. And webinar 2 will also be recorded and posted as well. But again, we just remind you, please feel free to share the webinar link with your colleagues and peers. And also, please feel free to invite them to the next webinar. So in closing, just would love to say thank you, all of you, for being with us for this session as we've kicked off Margin and Mission Ignition 2019. We appreciate your participation. We certainly hope you'll join us for the next webinar. And again, we can't thank you enough for being here with us this afternoon. So with that, if you have any questions or comments that you'd like to ask of us, feel free to contact either myself or Larry. Our email addresses are here. And of course, Josephine Eisenberg, the Patterson Foundation, will be available if you need to reach out to her as well. Again, thank you all for joining us, and we will say goodbye.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care. Bye-bye.